You know that feeling when it's late at night, the house is perfectly quiet, and you find yourself just staring out the window? We've all been there. Today we are exploring something deeply human, something a little quiet, and honestly, something you've probably felt but maybe never quite had the words for. We're looking at the warmth of melancholy. So get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let this be a safe, calm space to just reflect.
Our source material has this incredibly beautiful observation. It says, sometimes sadness does not arrive like a storm. Sometimes it arrives quietly. Let's just sit with that for a second. Think about those familiar emotional habits we all have. The old memory that pops up out of nowhere with that gentle, familiar ache. It doesn't always roar in like a hurricane, right? Most of the time, it just kind of sits down right next to us.
Which brings us to a question that, let's be honest, we've all asked ourselves at some point. Why do we put on emotional music when we're already feeling low? Why do we deliberately cue up that one playlist we absolutely know is going to make us feel even sadder? We all do it, staring out the rainy window, revisiting old photos, playing that one heart-wrenching song. Why are we so drawn to that?
Part 1. When sadness arrives quietly, and why we actually lean into it.
See, our first instinct isn't always to push sadness away. Actually, leaning into it is this deeply human contradiction. It is absolutely not a flaw in your emotional wiring. Just think about the things that trigger this. Rainy days, lonely walks, looking through nostalgic photographs, those bittersweet memories. On paper, that sounds like a recipe for a terrible afternoon. But strangely enough, instead of running from these feelings, we lean in. We sit with them. We let them linger longer than we probably should. Why does that actually feel comforting instead of unbearable?
That brings us to Section 2, the paradox of pain and romanticizing sadness.
So here's the core mystery of this whole experience. If sadness hurts, why in the world do we seek it out on purpose? Just let that sink in for a moment. It completely goes against basic survival, right? We're wired to run away from pain. And yet, here we are, actively hitting play on that sad song for the 5th time today.
Section 3. The safety of melancholy.
To make sense of this, we kind of have to look at the psychology of it all. Our brains are incredibly complex, and they process different kinds of sadness, well, differently. On one hand, you have real emotional danger, acute grief, actual threats to our well-being, overwhelming crises. But on the other hand, you have what psychologists call safe sadness. Basically, your brain knows the difference between a real, present threat and the contained, controlled sadness you get from a movie, a book, or a beautiful piece of music. So, safe sadness is essentially an emotional experience that is intense, sure, but not truly threatening. It lives in those nostalgic memories or that heartbreaking film. Your brain gets it. It knows, okay, this is emotionally heavy, but physically, we're perfectly safe sitting right here on the couch. Because of that, we're able to have this massive emotional release without triggering our actual danger alarms.
And here is the really profound part. In this context, sadness becomes a place we visit rather than something that's attacking us. You can sort of walk into the room of melancholy, look around, feel the absolute depth of it, and know deep down that you can leave whenever you want to. There's just a huge, comforting relief in knowing you're safe enough to feel that deeply.
Which completely explains why sad music feels so intensely personal. A sad song literally translates our inner world into sound. It holds the emotions that we can't quite articulate ourselves. It's almost like an artist reached right into your chest and turned your messy, complicated feelings into a melody. And honestly, just feeling understood like that, it's incredibly relieving. We don't enjoy the pain, we enjoy the catharsis of finally feeling seen.
And there's actually a beautiful biological side to this catharsis too. Think of it like a 3-step process. First, you have the emotional release. Maybe you cry. Second, your body instantly steps in to calm you down, releasing comforting hormones like prolactin, and your nervous system starts to regulate itself. And third, you get that feeling of emotional recovery. It's exactly why you often feel strangely grounded and warm after a good cry. The sadness might ache, but your body is quite literally designed to catch you when you fall.
Part 4. Slowing down the world and reflecting inward.
You know, melancholy acts as a really powerful anchor. We live in this loud, overwhelmingly fast world where we almost never get a chance to just stop. But sadness? Sadness forces us inward. It creates this quiet contrast. It makes our memories feel sharper. When we actually slow down to reflect, we're reminded of what truly mattered to us, who mattered to us, and what we once felt deeply about. It just completely cuts through the superficial noise of the day-to-day.
And that brings us to nostalgia. The source material describes nostalgia as this mixture of love and grief existing at the exact same time. Isn't that just a beautiful way to think about it? If you're feeling nostalgic, if you're missing something from your past, it simply means it meant something deeply important to you. The grief is literally just the echo of the love. It's a gentle reminder that your life has had some truly beautiful chapters.
Maybe that's why we return to those feelings so often. As the text points out, sadness can make them feel emotionally honest. Not because we want to suffer, but because in those super quiet moments, we usually feel the closest to our true selves. The world just softens, it slows down. Emotional depth finally takes over all that emotional noise.
Section 5. Evidence that we loved.
Now, as we carry this forward, it's definitely important to draw a boundary. Sadness shouldn't become a permanent home. There is a huge, vital difference between reflecting on your emotions and drowning inside them. The goal of sitting with a nostalgic memory or a sad song isn't about trapping yourself in pain or romanticizing suffering. It's just about allowing yourself to sit with a feeling, and accepting that feeling deeply is just a normal part of being human.
I really want you to take this next part to heart. Sadness is not evidence that something is wrong with you. Please let that ease whatever burden you might be carrying right now. We live in a world that is constantly shouting at us to be happy, be productive, smile all the time. But it is perfectly okay to feel heavy sometimes. Feeling deeply doesn't mean you're broken. It just means you are human and you're awake to your own life.
Because, as our source material so perfectly puts it, it is evidence that we cared, that we loved, that we experienced life sincerely enough for it to leave emotional fingerprints behind. Just think about that phrase for a second. Emotional fingerprints. Every bit of melancholy you feel is just proof of a time you cared deeply about a person, a place, or even an older version of yourself. You lived sincerely enough to let it leave a mark.
And honestly, maybe that's the real reason sadness can feel so comforting. Not because we enjoy the ache, but because inside it there is honesty, reflection, and connection. Melancholy can be this quiet little place where we finally feel seen by ourselves. So the next time sadness quietly pulls up a chair beside you, ask yourself, what beautiful thing from your past is your melancholy trying to remind you that you loved?